Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. and this is Patrick Christys Tonight, and there's only one story on every patriotic British person's lips.
I see no reasons why there should be any more impairments to doing the right thing.
Right now, pro-Rwanda Plan Tory MPs are locked in crunch meetings with top legal experts to determine if that new Rwanda deal is going to be workable. If it's not, they'll revolt, and it could bring Sunak down. I will make sure you're right on the inside of this with our own legal expert and a prominent member of the ERG, the group scrutinising Cleverly's new deal. This is the show to watch for Rwanda Plan fans. And do Whinge and Ginge need arm protection when they come to the UK? Harry is challenging the Home Office. I say, if you don't feel safe here, then don't bother coming, you massive traitor. A 91-year-old woman died because a foreign care home worker who never passed an English exam, ironic, couldn't communicate with 999 call handlers. Is it racist to expect care home workers to speak fluent English? What's wrong as well with this picture? Yep, 2 blokes have come first and second in a women's cycling event. I discussed that and whether or not people with a penis and a history of violence should be allowed into women's prisons, because it's happening up in Scotland. On the sofa tonight, I have got Susan Evans, I've got Albie Amankona and Rebecca Reid. This is Patrick Christys Tonight, and let's all go. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. Should illegal immigrants have human rights? Tweet us at GB News. I'll see you after the headlines.
Patrick, thank you and good evening. Well, the top story from the GB newsroom tonight is that a 28-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder following the stabbing of a 29-year-old woman in Aberfan in South Wales today. The pregnant woman was subjected to a knife attack on the street this morning. The victim was taken to hospital and is believed to be in a stable condition, her wounds not thought to be life-threatening. Chief Inspector Rob Miles from South Wales Police gave this update.
The man is known to the victim and is currently in police custody. I appreciate there will be a real sense of shock within the local community with the attack having happened in broad daylight. Local schools activated the lockdown protocols to keep people safe. Neighbourhood officers have been in the area to ensure pupils have been able to leave the school safely at the normal time. This was done as a precaution, and schools will open tomorrow as normal.
Well, in other news today, the Home Secretary said he's uncomfortable with some of the criticism being directed at Rwanda as he unveiled a new asylum treaty in Kigali. It's understood new British laws are to be expedited through Parliament, declaring Rwanda a safe country for the processing of asylum seekers arriving in the UK. Mr Cleverly praised Rwanda for being part of the British solution, but the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, cast doubt on the plans.
They've sent more Home Secretaries than they have asylum seekers to Rwanda, and this scheme is badly failing. They still won't tell us how much it will cost, even though we've already know that we've spent £140 million or more on this scheme. And what they could be doing is putting that money into going after the criminal smuggler gangs and taking action there instead.
Yvette Cooper. Now, junior doctors in England are set to stage the longest strike in NHS history after talks on an improved pay offer with the government broke down. Ministers and the British Medical Association, the union representing junior doctors, have been locked in negotiations for 5 weeks now, trying to find a solution. The BMA says the government has offered a pay increase of 3%, which it says amounts to a pay cut for some doctors. The first walkouts are due to start across England from 7 a.m. on the 20th of December. The High Court was told today that the impact of a successful attack on the Duke of Sussex should have been considered when his security arrangements were changed in 2020. Prince Harry was stripped of special protections normally afforded to royals when he stepped back from his royal duties and went to America. His lawyers say a failure to carry out a full risk assessment meant he was treated in an unlawful and unfair way when he was provided with a weaker kind of security while visiting the UK. And lastly, Sir Paul McCartney has led tributes for Wings and Moody Blues musician Denny Laine, who's died at the age of 79. His wife said he died after a long battle with lung disease. Denny Laine sang on the Moody Blues multi-million-selling track Go Now and co-wrote the Wings hit Mull of Kintyre. Paul McCartney described him as an outstanding vocalist and guitar player, saying it was a pleasure to know him. And Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees said he was a wonderful person and that his music would be sorely missed. Denny Laine, who died today. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome along. Now, today, James Cleverly became the third Home Secretary in under 2 years to do this. Travel to Rwanda to sign a new migration deal. Yes, that's right. So we've sent 3 ministers and 0 migrants. But according to the new Home Sec, this agreement is more robust than the previous ones. He thinks that this time round the government has addressed all the legal concerns and that they have the measure of those lefty lawyers. Take a listen.
I see no reasons why there should be any more impairments to doing the right thing to break the business model of these people smuggling gangs and for the humane and professional treatment of refugees that Rwanda is offering.
Well, let's hope it is. Third time lucky. We've already paid the Rwandan government £140 million for a few photo ops. Not even Posh and Beck's got that for their wedding pics. But how long ago does this feel? April last year, Priti Patel signing the Migration and Economic Development Partnership. 2 months later, the first deportation flight was halted at the 11th hour due to a foreign judge in a foreign country sticking their nose in. It was a sign of the banging headache to come. That day is the closest this country has ever come to establishing a proper deterrent that would stop the boats. And remember when Suella Braverman said this?
I would love to be here saying, well, claiming victory. I would love to be having a front page of the Telegraph with a plane taking off to Rwanda. That's my dream. That's my dream. It's
when
my
will
obsession.
that happen?
Even for the straight-talking Suella, that dream became a nightmare. The courts blocked her at every single turn, and if you believe her resignation letter, so did Rishi Sunak. And now we're expected to believe that James, let's not leave the ECHR and the Rwanda plan is batshit cleverly, has got it over the line. Sunak didn't back Suella. He stands accused of ignoring Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick. This Robert Jenrick
law says you can't enter the country illegally. If you or I crossed an international border or literally broke into another country, we would expect to be treated very seriously.
They broke into another country, are you? The people who come on small boats?
I am, yeah.
That's the phraseology you're happy to use, Miss?
I am. If somebody comes into our country on a small boat,
are breaking into our country.
Yes, they're coming into our country in flagrant breach of our immigration rules. That is wrong. I think it's doing untold damage to our country.
Yeah. I mean, listen to the faux outrage over there at Sky News, the clutching of pearls from people who just don't live in the real world like you and I. Jeremy's spot on, except illegal migrants aren't just breaking in. Afterwards, they're getting the 4-star hotel treatment, bed and board. Well, it's like catching a burglar in your house and offering them tea and biscuits and letting them sleep in your marital bed. All the while, it was reported today that a third of our military personnel are living in deficient housing with black mould and broken boilers. Right now, as we speak, the pro-Rwanda Eurosceptic wing of the Tory party has set a team of lawyers onto whether or not the new Rwanda treaty will actually work. The One Nation group of Conservatives has said they'll oppose any part of the legislation that they deem unworkable or doomed to fail. So it's a bit of blue on blue already here. But today, on the day that James Cleverly went to Rwanda, there was a cabinet meeting. Now, it was rumoured that at that cabinet meeting, they were going to discuss disapplying human rights laws to people who come to Britain illegally. They didn't do that, apparently. Apparently, they didn't even talk about Rwanda. They ignored it. But we won't. Now, before I go to my panel, I want to actually find out, get the inside track as to whether or not this supposed Rwanda deal update is legal. Is it going to work? Maybe we can just put this to bed early doors. Let's cross over to the acclaimed lawyer known as Mr. Loophole. It is Nick Freeman, who's been looking over the finer details a little bit here. Nick, look, thank you very, very much. So, is this a winner? Do we think this particular version of this Rwanda deal is actually going to have a basis in law? Is it going to work?
No, it's not going to work. Right. The Supreme Court 3 weeks ago upheld the Court of Appeal. What the government is doing now is what they should have done before this case reached the Court of Appeal. So they're closing the gate after the horse has bolted. The measures they're putting in place are admirable. The whole purpose of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda is to act as a deterrent. And I'm not suggesting that maybe 2 or 3 years down the road this may work. But of course, the Prime Minister is under enormous pressure. He wants the first flights to be in the air by, I think, March or April of next year. And that simply isn't going to happen, because even if they're going to send lawyers over to Rwanda, Rwanda has an appalling record on human rights. The asylum system doesn't work properly. Israel had an experiment with that and it didn't work. So what the government have said, what the Supreme Court has said is, look, that they are incentivized to make it work. And with these proposals, if the government goes back in 2-3 years' time, it may get there. But at the moment, it is bound by the Supreme Court ruling. And the government can't just waft that aside by putting different labels and plugging the gaps like that. It simply isn't going to work. Okay. The government's got there's two parts to the plan. One, to fill in the holes, and the second is to actually stop any appeal to any court on this particular subject. So it's actually trying to stifle the judiciary, which of course is against the rule of law. It's a significant point, and the government is not going to get away with it. It's an independent. The judiciary is completely independent.
So you think this is just a complete nonsense? And even, just quickly, Nick, even with Rwanda signing up, which is what they've done today, supposedly, to having essentially an international tribunal in their country overseeing the law and the administration of their asylum policy, and their guarantee they're not going to send anyone back to an unsafe country, and the very strong right to appeal. Despite all of that, you don't think that our Supreme Court is going to say that's enough? I mean, what more do we have to do?
Well, then it needs to see it working. It needs to see it working. 3 weeks ago, it ruled it was unsafe. It's not going to become safe tomorrow. 2 years down the road, it may be safe when, after a period of time, the steps that have been put in place have been found to work. The government are already committed to spending fortunes at the moment on staff there, training them. That's the problem. There's a lot of money that's being wasted. So the government has to get this through. But my view is there's not a chance of it going through by next April. It will be much longer.
OK, look, Nick, thank you very, very much. It's Nick Freeman there, who's a top legal eagle for us. I am going to get the thoughts of my panel now. Political commentator Suzanne Evans, GB News contributor Albi Amankona, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Suzanne, I'll start with you. I think the majority of the public want this to work, OK? There was talk about whether or not the Cabinet today were going to discuss essentially trying to make it so that if anyone comes into Britain illegally, breaks into Britain, as Robert Jenrick would say, then they will not really be classed as having human rights, and therefore they can just be sent to Rwanda. Do you think they should do that?
Well, they shouldn't really. I mean, you know, somebody, like you say, breaks into your home, they lose their rights. They don't have any rights to stay in that home. And whilst you can't strip people of human rights because they are universal, there is certainly fairly obvious to me that if somebody comes here illegally, then they should be sent back. It's not rocket science. But this plan has always been a disaster right from the start. And as Nick Freeman points out, the Supreme Court ruled that Rwanda was unsafe a couple of weeks ago. What's changed? Nothing has changed.
Well, you say that, but there have been some quite significant, I would argue, some quite significant changes to this today. You know, the idea that Rwanda, which is a sovereign country, is going to allow an international tribunal of people to scrutinise absolutely every single thing that it does when it comes to making its decisions, a guarantee that they're not going to be sent back to unsafe countries, and on top of that, a fervent right to appeal. As far as I can tell, we're paying Rwanda to be in the situation we're in now, which is that even if somebody comes to your country and lies about where they're from and who they are, they still have to stay, Albie.
Look, I would like the Rwanda plan to work. I wish I could say, I think in 12 months' time before the next general election, a plane will have taken off, but I don't think a plane will have taken off for the reasons that Nick has said. And it just seems to me that whilst the whole idea of sending immigrants to a third country for processing is perfectly reasonable, even our Supreme Court said it's lawful to send immigrants to third countries for processing, Rwanda is the wrong country. And the government will have known about all of these roadblocks that were coming up. They didn't do anything about it. And we're in this position, 12 months out from a general election, and no flight's going to take off. Total waste of time.
Rebecca, what's your view on all of this? I mean, personally, I think that if the lawyers and the Supreme Court want to get in the way of something like this, that the will of the people is behind, then the problem is with the law and not the policy.
I'm very nervous about the idea of playing around with human rights because they don't suit us on one issue, because if you do it for one thing, you can do it for other things, and I personally really love human rights. I'm a big fan of them. I think maybe all humans should have them. I think the issue with this is that they're chasing what feels like an easy win, and it's a bit like when you've been dating somebody who's awful for 6 months and you think, well, I've dated them for 6 months, might as well just marry them now. And this is a bad plan, but they've invested time and effort in it. I actually think she's lovely. I think that this is about the fact that James cleverly wants to be the person who gets it over the line, and I think that Suella wanted to be, and I think there is a sense of pride about it, and they know they're probably going to lose the next election, so if you can get some wins before you're out for your next career, it makes you look good. For your public speaking career, it makes you look good. But this is not a sensible plan, and it's detracting from coming up with a sensible plan, which realistically...
I do think there is such a thing, hear me out on this, as potentially too much human rights, OK? So if you've got... No, seriously, if you've got people who have come... Hear me out. If you've got people who have come to a country illegally that potentially have a criminal record that we could know nothing about whatsoever, who don't tell you who they are or where they're from, and you absolutely cannot get them out of your country, even to a safe third country, then what's the point of anything?
There are limits to human rights. There always are limits to human rights. You know, human rights don't apply so much in war. You've got people can be tried for war crimes, and that's a different matter. But clearly, if you're going into battle and you're a war, then you have every right to shoot somebody if you're under attack. So there is a limit to human rights, and I think in this case there should be. I agree with you, but like Rebecca, I am nervous about kicking the baby out with the bathwater, really. But you know that there's something seriously wrong with a plan when somebody like me starts to agree with the dark lord of politics, Alistair Campbell, and he pointed out this morning, you know, that these 2 trips, not including James Cleverly's latest one, 2 trips have cost 50 million quid, 3 Home Office Home Secretaries have gone, no migrants there. And what happens, Patrick, when these international tribunals start sending people back from Rwanda here? The optics then are going to be quite...
Interesting. Very quick.
What happens if somebody gets hurt when they're there and then the government are culpable for that and there's a massive lawsuit?
Why should we be
It's not a good plan.
For absolutely everything. We're not culpable for absolutely everything. And if people have made a decision that has led themselves to be putting in harm's way, then not everybody is responsible for all of that. But on tomorrow, on Thursday's show, we will be revealing exclusive footage and information that frankly blows the lid off the government's claims that they are on top of the Channel migrant crisis, OK? Here is a little flavour of what we're going to reveal.
Join us tomorrow night and Thursday night as we report from northern France. And despite Rishi Sunak's continued optimism that his Stop the Boats policy is working, we've uncovered evidence that the migrant crisis here is as bad as it's ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. We knew this Rwanda stuff was coming up. We knew that it is an issue that you guys really care about. And so we sent over Mark White to northern France. He's going to be reporting back from there exclusively for this show tomorrow and Thursday. I've had advanced sight of some of the stuff that he has seen and caught on camera, and it completely blows the lid off the government's claims that they are on top of the small boats crisis. Make sure that you're tuning in tomorrow 9 to 11 p.m. for that first instalment of that shocking and eye-opening exclusive report from Mark White in Calais. But still to come this evening. After a 91-year-old dementia patient sadly died because foreign care staff were unable to explain her condition to 999 operators, should English language tests be made tougher for medical staff? That's the view of the coroner who led the inquest into Barbara Reimel's tragic death. And the former Big Brother star and director of Care Campaign for the Vulnerable, Jane Connery, hits out at the system. That's all happening very shortly. But first, in the clash, as Prince Harry claims that he's been treated unfairly, should the taxpayer foot the bill for armed police to protect the runaway royal when he visits Britain? That's what he wants. Margaret Thatcher's former aide, Niall Gardner, takes on showbiz reporter Rebecca Toomey. That's next.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No-nonsense Nana Akua joins me very, very soon on the ongoing scandal in Scotland about violent men being allowed to just rampage through women's prisons. When will the madness end? But first, it's time for the clash. And Prince Harry is, surprise, surprise, back in court, this time challenging a 2020 Home Office decision that removed his automatic entitlement to armed police protection when he visits the UK. The Duke's lawyers argued today that there had been unfairness in how his decision was reached, despite the fact that the runaway royal will still have access to publicly funded police security in Britain on a case-by-case basis. The Home Office decision only downgraded Harry's automatic entitlement to protection at the same level as a working royal, after he withdrew from his official duties and resettled in the States. Many people think that's absolutely fair enough. Here's what the good people of Birmingham think of the Duke of Delusion's demands for taxpayer-funded protection when we asked them earlier today.
So he should normally pay for his own private security out of his own funds.
So if he pays for it himself, he's welcome back. But not for us to pay.
At the end of the day, he's still the king's son, so why shouldn't he be looked after?
I don't think any taxpayer should be paying for the monarchy anymore.
Decided that he didn't want to be part of the royal family anymore, so no.
But what do you think? As his lawyers challenge the Home Office decision, should Prince Harry be entitled to armed police guards when he visits Britain? Let me know your thoughts. Email us, gbviews@gbnews.com. Tweet me @gbnews. While you're there, go and vote in our poll. I'll bring you those results very shortly. But to debate this now, I'm joined by the director of Washington, D.C.'s Heritage Foundation, Niall Gardner, a man who I think is actually campaigning to get Prince Harry deported from America, and showbiz journalist Rebecca Toomey as well. Niall, I'll start with you. Should Prince Harry have taxpayer-funded police protection when he's in the UK?
Patrick, great to be on the show today. Prince Harry should not be receiving British taxpayers' funding for security in the UK. He's not a working royal. He basically abandoned the royal family. He and Meghan Markle, of course, launched consistent attacks against the British royal family from their mansion in Montecito in California. I think it's absolutely outrageous, the idea that the British public should be subsidising Prince Harry and Meghan Markle for their protection in the UK. This is not the job of the British taxpayer to be subsidising somebody who doesn't do any work whatsoever, as far as I can tell, for the royal family or for the British people. So absolutely not a penny.
OK, now, Rebecca, I understand that you think that if Harry is visiting his family, so anything connected with the royal family, he should have police protection. Is that right?
No, I do. I think we have to remember that Harry didn't choose to be a member of the royal family. He certainly chose not to be, but he was.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, we'll just go back to Niall then. OK, unfortunately, we lost Rebecca there. We'll get back to her. Look, let me know what you think in the inbox. It is already flooding in. gbviews@gbnews.com. Harry, if he gets allowed to have us pay for security when he visits the UK, then he will start to argue that we should supply security for him in America. He tries to do that in Canada. That's what Dave says in the inbox. This country should tell him to pay for the security himself. Better still stay away, says Colin. Rebecca, I'm going to go for take two on this one. So you think if he's visiting the royal family, he should get protection, yes?
If he's doing something connected to the royals, he's visiting family, doing something with Invictus Games, one of his charities, then I think perhaps we should support him in this. And let's just remember, Princess Diana, when she left the royal family, she still did have British protection when she travelled with her sons. So I think really we should do like for like. So if Harry's travelling with his children, I think we should honour that and do the same. But if he's promoting a Netflix show, then perhaps he can, cough up and have his own private security.
Yeah, so private security is one option. Niall, another one is that I believe in the past he said, well, I'll pay for police protection. Well, I'm sorry, Harry, we've got a stab-a-thon going on in central London and most major cities in the UK at the moment. We've got loads of crime. Police aren't turning up to things like shoplifting. Why should you be allowed to pay to take bobbies off the beat?
Yeah, exactly. It's fundamentally wrong, I think, for Prince Harry to be demanding that he have police protection that he can pay for, because this would give him a very privileged status. He can pay for his own private security. In fact, Harry and Meghan have earned an estimated $100 million from the Netflix deal, $20 million through Spotify, $20 million through the book deal. So they are vastly wealthy individuals. They can afford private security. And the idea that the British government should be providing special protection officers for them, even if Harry and Meghan are paying, that is fundamentally wrong, because that's not the same service given to the British members of the public who are facing soaring levels of crime. And so I do think with Harry and Meghan, they are extremely narcissistic, arrogant individuals. They do nothing whatsoever, frankly, for the British people, and they don't deserve preferential treatment.
OK, I mean, Rebecca, just come back to that. I mean, that is a quite widely held view, really, that turned his back on his family, potentially turned his back on his country, made his bed, he can lie in it.
I understand why people feel the way they do, but I think we have to remember, as I just mentioned, I'm not sure if I got cut off, about how he was born into the royal family. He didn't choose to be in the royal family, he certainly chose not to be. But we have to remember that, you know, we have to protect some of our vulnerable people, whoever they are. And let's face it, the amount of vitriol there is being spat at Harry and Meghan, I'm sure their security is probably needs to be much higher than ever before. And I think, what would it take for us to actually think, let's protect this life? Just because he's Prince Harry and is in the public eye, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be protecting him. What would it take for us to actually think we do actually just need to protect him?
I'm sorry, I just feel like with Prince Harry's newfound woke views, right, he's probably the kind of person, if he was living in this country, would think that, you know, non-dom status should be abolished and all the wealthy should pay their fair share of tax. I do find it remarkable now that he therefore wants the British taxpayer to pay for his own security when he's in this country. Some may say that's a bit hypocritical.
Yeah, it's absolutely outrageous. It is very hypocritical, considering his ultra-woke political views, along with Meghan Markle as well. And this idea that they are, you know, vulnerable individuals, they're not. I mean, they are hugely privileged, wealthy people who have a great deal of security in California. And as for vitriol and hate, they really spew that all the time against the British royal family. They do all they can to undermine the royals and also, frankly, the British people as well. It's absolutely disgraceful. They should not be given any kind of special privileged protection or treatment by the British government, funded by the British people.
All right, well, both of you, thank you very, very much. It's great to have you both on the show. That is a clash. You both have radically different views, and it's good to get them both across. That's Rebecca Twomey there, showbiz journalist, and Niall Gardner as well, the director of Washington, D.C.'s Heritage Foundation. But the big question, really, is who do you agree with? As his lawyers challenge the Home Office decision, should Prince Harry be entitled to armed police guards when he visits Britain? Lynn on Twitter says Harry's not a working royal and that was his decision. He can bring his own bodyguards with him. Why should he be entitled to armed guards paid for by the taxpayer? Anna says Harry isn't as important to the country as he pretends he is. He just wants to be in the news and can obviously afford to pay for his own protection if he wants it. Asmo on Twitter says, despite what's happened, he's still a member of our royal family and he should be entitled to protection. If he had no bodyguard and was killed in an attack, it would be a total tragedy. It would, of course, be a tragedy. I just wonder whether or not he could pay for his own bodyguard. But your verdict is in. 14% of you agree that Harry should be entitled to armed police guards when he visits Britain. 86% of you say that he should not. Now, we've got a very emotive story coming up, and it has got a lot of people going in the inbox, got a lot of people going on social media as well, and we're just going to confront it head on, because coming up, we tackle two stories that expose the shocking state of women's rights. First, the Scottish Government's startling new policy that will allow dangerous trans criminals with a history of violence against women to serve their sentences in female prisons, and a pair of trans cyclists sparked fury by stealing first and second in an elite cycling competition. So is society safe and fair for women today? GBNews superstar Nana Akua speaks out shortly. But here we go. After a 91-year-old dementia patient died because foreign care staff were unable to explain her condition to 999 operators, should English language tests be made tougher for medical staff? Former Big Brother star and director of Care Campaign for the Vulnerable, Jane Connery, gives her view before my panel return to this debate. Is it really racist to want workers to speak English? Don't go away.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. GB News star Nana Aquare on the way, but first, an elderly woman has tragically died after 2 foreign carers failed to describe the details of the medical emergency. So Barbara Rymel passed away, having become trapped under a stair lift after a fall at a care home in Somerset last year. The coroner's report found that when her 2 carers from Romania and India called 999, their inability to understand the difference between bleeding and breathing made any assessment of Mrs. Rymel's condition virtually impossible. Shockingly, it's also emerged at the inquest that one of the carers never passed the English language test required for a work visa, with the coroner, Samantha Marsh, blasting the minimum level of English required for care home staff as wholly insufficient. Well, before I go to my panel again on this, I'm joined now by the Director of Care Campaign for the Vulnerable. It's Jane Connery. Jane, thank you very, very much. How do you feel about this? Do you think it's unfair to ask foreign care workers, or demand really, that they should be fluent in English?
Hi, Patrick. Thank you for having me on. This is a really tragic case. No, it's not unfair at all. I think being a carer, it's all about communication, especially when you're dealing with very vulnerable people. To not have that level of communication is a failure. And this has to be directed at the person who obviously employed these carers. So it's really, really important, particularly in dementia care, that carers have a strong English language so that they can do the right care and they can deliver the right care.
But also as well, dealing with predominantly elderly, vulnerable people who might already, on top of whatever primary care issues they may have, they may also be deaf or all of those very understandable things. I don't think it's racist, is it, to say, look, having someone who can speak clear, fluent English is going to be better for the care of your vulnerable elderly loved one?
Absolutely not. I don't know why that's even stated. It's like saying, you can be a doctor, but you don't have to necessarily train on how the body functions. Being a carer, it's the main requisite to have the right communication. I have personal experience of this with my mum when she had home care, and I was advised by the provider to use Google Translate to actually talk to the carer. It is a huge failing, and it could have placed my mother at risk. We receive a lot of calls every week about this issue. No, it's not racist. It's very, very serious. And I think this case, as with other cases that have happened, it's extremely distressing for everybody, including the carers.
No, indeed. Look, thank you very, very much, Jane, for coming on and just giving us the truth and the reality, really, of what it's like. That's the director of the Care Campaign for the Vulnerable, Jane Connery. So, it's a widespread issue. I'm going to go to my panel. Albie, I'll start with you. I mean, is this a very obvious example of how having, incredibly lax immigration system, unfortunately, can cost lives?
I think we've got to look at why is it that the English language skills required to be a carer are so low, and why is it that all the carers, many of the carers that we seem to have in Britain are immigrants, is because British people don't want to do the job, and the reason why British people don't want to do the job is because the wages aren't very high, and the reason the wages aren't very high is because we import immigrant labour, which depresses wages. So it's this insolvable problem, and we're here talking about the symptoms of a problem, rather than actually looking at how to solve the problem. And we'll solve the problem by increasing care wages, and we'll solve the problem by reducing migration.
OK, look, Rebecca, I'm going to throw it over to you here. How do you feel about this? I mean, obviously, it's a 91-year-old lady, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, she was 91 and she had Alzheimer's, so there was a complicated medical history here. However, the nature of the accident was actually fairly horrible. What I'm confused by, though, is that in terms of these carers trying to talk to 999, there are many examples of toddlers being able to get the ambulance to come. I am concerned by the way that the ambulance system works in this country, that they rang and they were clearly in distress. They should have sent somebody immediately without needing to go through nine questions about bleeding versus breathing. If someone's distressed, they should have sent someone. That is an NHS problem. There is also the wider problem of people who speak fluent English in the country don't want to be carers. I think as a country we're too reliant on care homes and carers because we don't do enough to look after our own elderly relatives, which creates this industry for profit-making care homes, which pay people terrible wages and therefore can only get people who don't really want to do the job, who don't speak fluent English.
OK, Suzanne, your take on this. I mean, this, for me, is an incredibly widespread problem, and the idea on top of it was that no one had checked to see if any of them had actually passed their English exam.
No, I mean, it's really shocking. There's no doubt been an abject failure here on the part of those employing these people. But I just get incensed by this. The way we treat carers in care homes, it's appalling. Rebecca mentioned, Albie said too, The wages are terrible. The starting salary is £14,000 a year. How are you supposed to live on that unless you're living with your parents, say? How are you supposed to even think about renting somewhere in London on that kind of a very low salary? And yet the job is mentally, physically, emotionally draining. And it's about time somebody actually shook it up, did something about it and started to pay people
Is that any excuse for having someone there who can't talk the language?
No, it's not. But my point is, Patrick, if they were paid £30,000 a year, people would be queuing up to do the job. We wouldn't need to be exploiting foreign migrant labour, which is what we're doing here. We're saying, oh, you're foreign, you can come and do the cheap jobs that we don't want to do. That is what's a form of racism, in my view. I think it's appalling, and it leads to tragedies like these. And my worry is the government's obviously got to respond to this coroner's report, and I know what they'll say. It'll be, we have learnt lessons, because lessons are always learnt. The truth is, lessons never are.
OK, I mean, Albie, presumably we have to go on a government-mandated, state-sponsored care training scheme. I mean, I'm all for this. This idea that, you know, the practical jobs in society, I mean, this is a caregiving job, but other practical jobs that we have in society, the idea that we can't specifically incentivise people to go and do these things, whether it's waiving any kind of student fees that you would need and increasing wages. I mean, this is really the way around this, because at the moment we've got care home providers who are more than happy to get people over, not really giving a toss whether or not they can speak the language. I would argue, therefore, not really giving a toss about the care of the 91-year-old dementia sufferer that they are, you know, supposed to be looking after. I mean, is this an example where the state has to come in?
The state does need to come in, and we've had Conservative Prime Minister after Conservative Prime Minister say they're going to sort out the care sector in this country, they're going to sort out social care, but then whenever they put something on the table, because it's so expensive, because we need to raise wages and it's expensive to care for people, people are not happy with the way that we fund it. People weren't happy with Theresa May's idea for people to use people's homes to fund it. People don't want to raise taxes, so we can't pay for it that way. It's an expensive problem. It's going to need money. We don't have very much of it.
And I sense also where there are movements to encourage people to learn English living in this country, classes, accessibility, an app. A Conservative government who was encouraging people to learn English would not be well received. But actually...
Why not?
Because I think it would sound like they were saying, come over, we love immigration. It wouldn't feel like a hard-on immigration policy. I imagine a lot of viewers would not be pleased to hear that tax money.
I think a lot of people would be pleased at an effort to integrate.
I'd be really interested to know whether I'm wrong.
Yeah, well,
genuinely.
No, of course. But I think one of the things that... email, gbnews.com. I do think that one of the things that people really get very wound up about is a perceived lack of integration. Language is the biggest barrier to that. Good stuff. Thank you very much, everybody. Difficult topic to cover, but there we go. Look, coming up, can the Conservatives claw back support by getting a Rwanda flight in the air before the next election, or is it too little too late? And will Nigel Farage remain after another eviction night down under? We will have exclusive reaction from Australia very, very soon. But next, we tackle two stories that expose the shocking state of women's rights today, or lack of. First, the Scottish Government's startling new policy that will allow dangerous trans criminals with a history of violence against women to serve their sentences in female prisons. And a pair of trans cyclists sparked fury by stealing first and second in an elite cycling competition. Obviously. So, is society safe and fair for women today? GB News superstar Nana Akua speaks out. Don't miss it.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Coming up, Conservative MP Dame Andrea Jenkins gives me the inside track on this secret meeting of Tory MPs that's taking place over the new Rwanda deal. If they don't back it, it could be curtains for Sunak. So like I said, keep your eyes peeled for that, because I think that will be really, really revealing. But in yet another attack on women's rights, a shocking new Scottish Government policy will allow trans criminals with a history of violence against women to serve their sentences in female prisons. Under the new rules, due to come into force next year, dangerous trans criminals will be transferred to women's prisons if there is compelling evidence that they do not, quote, pose a risk of unacceptable harm. Well, I'm joined now by GB News superstar Nana Akua. Nana, thank you very much. Always an absolute pleasure to have you on. Look, I mean, what's an unacceptable risk? I would argue a bloke who's attacked a woman is probably an unacceptable risk.
I just, I don't understand why this is carrying on. We saw what happened with Isla Bryson, who was obviously a man, Adam Graham, who went to a female prison, even though he was a double rapist. They're saying that somebody like this wouldn't go to a female prison, but then there is a potential that they could, as long as there's compelling evidence that they don't pose a harm or risk to women. Look, this is totally wrong. If I were in charge, it would be based on biology. That's that. If you're a man and you've committed a crime, you cannot then go to a female prison. I don't understand why they are confusing things in this manner. Because A, if you're a man that believes you're a woman, you are potentially suffering from gender dysphoria. B, you may well be playing the system like the likes of Isla Bryson. And C, what about the women in the prison that you are going to? Why do your rights trump the women's rights in that prison? There's no woman in that prison that wants a man, even if he thinks he's a woman, in the prison. It's not even safe for the staff. So I don't really get why somebody somewhere is pushing this and trying to literally remove women's rights before our very eyes. I think it's totally wrong. I don't even understand why this is going on.
Look, what I'll do is I'm going to read the SNP's Justice Secretary's comments on this, right? And I'll get you to respond. So Angela Constance, the SNP's Justice Secretary, said, this updated policy protects the safety and welfare of staff, those in their care, and the rights of transgender people. It makes clear that if a transgender woman meets the service's violence against women and girls criteria, they will be admitted and accommodated in the male estate. I mean, as far as you're concerned, there shouldn't even be a question. It's basically, if you're born with the male tackle, you're in a bloke's prison, right?
It's quite straightforward. And if you think you're a woman and you're a man, then, frankly, you can go to a secluded wing in the prison for trans prisoners, if that is the case. This woman is talking absolute claptrap. She should go to a prison then, perhaps, and sit there with a load of men who believe that they are women and see how comfortable she feels. It is absolutely absurd. And the worst bit is that it's actually a woman who's pushing this nonsense. She should go there herself. She should sit with male prisoners and imagine being a woman prisoner in that environment where you cannot escape because you're being punished. And the other part of it is that they have to honour the pronouns. So can you imagine if now in a man's prison, a man decides that he wants to be called a she, but remains in that prison, it diminishes the responsibility and the power of the guards there, who then have to go along with this.
It sounds like we're living in Narnia at this stage. We're living in Narnia. It's ridiculous. But look, to another affront to biological women, Nana, 2 trans athletes have won first and second. And this is, I know. I mean, it's getting worse, isn't it? I mean, there'll be a clean sweep next. This is at a prestigious cycling competition in America, leaving just one single biological woman on the podium. And it's not the first time this has happened. One of the trans cyclists, Evelyn Williamson, has collected a staggering 18 medals in female races across America, according to the Chicago Cross Cups website. The CCC has always been first and foremost about fostering a positive and supportive community built around competitive cyclo-cross racing. And that means welcoming and challenging everyone who wants to contribute to the series and make it better. Nana, what do you make of that?
Well, it's like we're living in a clown world. This has got to be a joke, right? Look, there's 2 men on the podium and there's a woman. I don't even know why she's smiling. If I were a woman in any of those sports, I'd refuse to go up against male competitors. I'd say let them have it. There's literally no point. I think women should boycott the sports where they are forced to participate with men who present themselves as women, because it's simply not fair. Sport is about bodies, it's comparing bodies, and it's comparing the strength of bodies. So in sport, at the very least, that should be the one place where a woman's space and being female should be sacrosanct. But sadly, not even there. It's almost comedic. It's got to be a joke. And these are, as Martina Navratilova said, mediocre men who didn't place anywhere in the male sports, but they've come in onto the women's sports and they're taking the proverbial.
Yeah, they are. No, the reality is bang average male sportsmen, not even bang average, sometimes actually diabolically awful male sportspeople who wouldn't have even got a college scholarship in their chosen sport, who then win something like this and continue to win it and continue to win it. I mean, I think it's cheating, but it's all very well and good being called inclusive or anything. But I mean, at the expense of what? My concern, though, Nana, is that picture that we saw earlier on there is a window into the future, where that's just sports.
Well, it's getting more and more familiar, isn't it? We're getting used to seeing men on the podium taking the first, second place. There's usually one solitary woman. Now it's going to be first, second and third. Somebody must be looking at this and thinking, this is ludicrous. But it doesn't seem to be happening. I don't understand. It's not... People will call it transphobic. It's not transphobic to talk about reality of biology. Men, in general, are stronger than women. So they shouldn't be competing in sports where power and strength is what is measured. That is quite simple, because it's not fair to the women.
No, it's absolutely not fair. And people's lives hinge on this, right? Sponsorship money in sports hinges on it. I mean, people's safety in the changing rooms, but we've already kind of touched on that, haven't we? Things like college scholarships, all of this stuff, just fame, and people have worked their entire lives, and then a bloke rocks up and takes it all away from you. It's an absolute disaster zone. But look, Nana, thank you very, very much. Always a delight to have you on. Nana Aquila, they're setting the world to rights, as she does so well. GB News presenter. Look, I've got quite a lot going on in the inbox, all right, and I just want to return very, very quickly to that. GBViews at gbnews.com. Really, really strong stuff about whether or not it was racist to suggest that people who work in our care system should speak fluent English. Patrick, people do look after their elderly in this country, but for some it's a last resort to put them in the care homes. The trouble is, of course, care homes, they think, are just too worried about making money and aren't too focused on whether or not people there should speak English. That's from Steve. Thank you very much, Steve. But coming up, former Education Minister Andrea Jenkins reveals all after dozens of Conservative backbenchers set up a Brexit-style star chamber, that's what they call it, of legal experts to establish whether the new Rwanda treaty would actually get flights off the ground. It's going to absolutely pop off this, right? Because we've got this new Rwanda deal, and whether or not this group of backbenchers back it could actually determine Sunak's future. But next, as it emerges, more 2019 Tory voters are set to back reform rather than Labour. Can the party still be saved from electoral oblivion? And I'll have all of tomorrow's front pages tonight. Will Farage remain in the jungle? Let's all go.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll be a colder night tonight than last night because much of the country will be under clear spells. That's because the rain many of us have seen through today, brought by this low pressure, is pushing off to the east, and behind it we've got a bit more of a settled interlude, at least that will last at least through Wednesday. So plenty of clear spells out there this evening and a frost developing quite quickly, so temperatures will drop off quite quickly tonight. There's an ice warning in force across eastern areas of Scotland. We'll see some mist and fog developing across parts of Wales and the southwest of England, and it will be widely a frosty start to the day tomorrow. But there will be some sunshine around, particularly across northern areas and eastern areas where the sunshine should last for much of the day. Further west, though, the sunshine will turn hazier throughout the day once any mist and fog clears, and you can see across parts of Northern Ireland there will be rain arriving by lunchtime. That rain will push into parts of Wales as well as Cornwall by the end of the day as well. Temperatures will start to rise, though, in the west with more of a southwesterly breeze. In the east, however, still feeling quite chilly with only highs of around 3 or 4 degrees. And then Thursday is going to be a widely more wet day. There are warnings in force for heavy rain across many western areas as well as parts of Scotland too. There could be some difficult driving conditions because of the rain, and the rain will last through the rest of the week, Friday and into the weekend, but temperatures will start to rise into double figures. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. and this is Patrick Christys Tonight.
And despite Rishi Sunak's continued optimism that his Stop the Boats policy is working, we've uncovered evidence that the migrant crisis here is as bad as it's ever been.
3 Home Secretaries under 3 Prime Ministers have gone to Rwanda. Today, we've got a new deal. The government better hope it works because we're ahead of the game. We've been to Calais, and despite what the government claims, the Channel migrant problem is worse than ever. Tory MPs are scrutinising this deal with top lawyers as we speak. Andrea Jenkins joins me. She's one of them for the inside track on a potential Tory rebellion that could finish Sunak off. Talking of tough immigration policies, look at this numpty who's just won Arts Turner Prize for assembling some scrap metal in a heap and calling it profound.
And finally...
obviously. Somewhere with a strong points-based immigration system is Australia. But they've let this guy in. Adam Cherry is outside the Versace Hotel down under to get the latest on Nigel in the jungle for us. Grief. Last night he ate a cricket. I'm not sure what on earth he's going to do tonight. That's enough, Adam. Thank you. Now, and we've been mugged off by the Norwegians. Yes, again, been mugged off by the Norwegians. They've sent us another terrible Trafalgar Square Christmas tree. It's so bad, it's needed a branch transplant. Yeah. You just couldn't make it up. I'll have tomorrow's front pages and the inside stories with my press packs. You'll be ahead of the game when it comes to tomorrow's news on the sofa tonight. Susan Evans, Albie Amankona and Rebecca Reid. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. Here we go. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. If Rwanda doesn't work this time round, does Sunak have to go? I'll see you after the headlines.
Patrick, thank you and good evening. Our top story from the GB newsroom tonight is that a 28-year-old male has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder following the stabbing of a 29-year-old woman in Aberfan in South Wales today. The pregnant woman was subjected to a knife attack in broad daylight there this morning. She was taken to hospital and is believed to be in a stable condition. Chief Inspector Rob Miles from South Wales Police gave this update.
The man is known to the victim and is currently in police custody. I appreciate there will be a real sense of shock within the local community with the attack having happened in broad daylight. Local schools activated the lockdown protocols to keep people safe. Neighbourhood officers have been in the area to ensure pupils have been able to leave the school safely at the normal time. This was done as a precaution and schools will open tomorrow as normal.
Chief Inspector Rob Miles. Now, the Home Secretary said today he's rather uncomfortable with some of the criticism being directed at Rwanda as he unveiled a new asylum treaty in Kigali. It's understood new British laws are to be expedited through Parliament declaring that Rwanda is a safe country for the processing of asylum seekers arriving in the UK. James cleverly praised Rwanda for being part of the British solution, but the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, cast doubt on the plans.
They've sent more Home Secretaries than they have asylum seekers to Rwanda, and this scheme is badly failing. They still won't tell us how much it will cost, even though we've already know that we've spent £140 million and more on this scheme. And what they could be doing is putting that money into going after the criminal smuggler gangs and taking action there instead.
Yvette Cooper. Junior doctors in England are set to stage the longest strike in NHS history after talks on an improved pay deal with the government broke down. Ministers and the British Medical Association, the union representing junior doctors, have been locked in negotiations now for 5 weeks, trying to find a solution. The BMA says the government's offered a pay increase of just 3%, which it says amounts to a pay cut for many doctors. The first walkouts are due to start across England from 7 a.m. on the 20th of December. The royal family has been seen in public for the first time since the publication of Omid Scobie's controversial book about the royal family was published. The monarch was joined by the Queen, Prince William and Kate for a dazzling evening at Buckingham Palace, which traditionally heralds the start of the festive season for the royal family. Aides stressed it was business as usual at the White Tie and Tiaras event. The annual gathering welcomes over 500 members of the diplomatic corps in the staterooms at Buckingham Palace. Now, Sir Paul McCartney has led tributes for Wings and Moody Blues musician Denny Laine, who's died today at the age of 79.
Since you gotta go, oh, you better go now.
His wife said he died after a long-running battle with lung disease. Denny Laine sang on the Moody Blues' million-selling hit Go Now, as you just heard, and co-wrote the Wings hit Mull of Kintyre, #1 for 9 weeks in Britain back in the day. Sir Paul McCartney describing him as an outstanding vocalist and guitar player, saying it was a pleasure to know him. Mickey Dolenz as well from the Monkees has said tonight on social media he was a wonderful person and that his music would be sorely missed. Denny Laine, who died today. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
How long is it before church groups in Rwanda start having collections for the people of Britain? James Cleverly is the third Home Secretary we've sent there, and 3 separate Prime Ministers have tried to get flights off the ground. Surely African nations are now looking at us and laughing at how chaotic and disorganised we are. We have signed a new treaty, though. Here he is, Cleverly, and Rwanda's Foreign Affairs Minister Vincent Biruta. That signing looks a little bit like a panic buy on transfer deadline day, but we will take it. As far as I can tell, the deal that the Home Secretary has signed in Rwanda today means that the Rwandan government has pretty much said that they will accept the chance they will probably end up keeping everyone who's sent there, OK? The new treaty ensures that people relocated to Rwanda are not at risk of being returned to a country where their life or freedom will be threatened. That's vitally important, which, as we've established, is essentially anywhere that's not Europe. There will be a new appeals body, which will be made up of judges from around the world. Rwanda's asylum system will be monitored by an independent committee whose powers to enforce the treaty would be beefed up. The monitoring committee will develop a system which will enable relocated people and their lawyers to lodge complaints, the government says. Can we just take a moment now to appreciate how utterly absurd it is for anyone to suggest that Rwanda isn't a safe country or that they're going to mistreat these so-called asylum seekers? Yes, they are taking a lot of money from us, but that's our fault, not theirs. They're accepting the world's scrutiny on their treatment of these people. They're allowing an international monitoring committee to oversee their decisions and appeal them if necessary. No sovereign country should be expected to make those kind of concessions. We certainly wouldn't, and yet they're doing it, aren't they? Do you honestly think that they're going that far out of their way just so that they can abuse the human rights of a few blokes from Albania? And still, there's no way this is happening before the next general election. This will be held up in the House of Lords. Remarkably, this will still not meet the case for legitimacy from a group of unelected people who get £300 a day just for turning up so they can gorge themselves on taxpayer-subsidised red wine and steak while they block the will of the people before they fall asleep in the chamber and dribble all over themselves. They're the ones that need abolishing, not the Rwanda plan. Labour aren't any better. Today, Yvette Cooper said that she'd replace it.
We don't think the Rwanda scheme is working, it's failing, and that's why we think the right thing to do is to replace it with a proper plan to go after the criminal gangs rather than writing all of these cheques to Rwanda for a policy that's continually failing. Actually use that money to go after the criminal gangs and make sure that you can prevent these dangerous boat crossings and protect our border security.
I'll just go after gangs. Yeah, it's proper policy. But we'll just go after gangs, yeah. But on this show, Patrick Christys tonight, we know the issue of illegal immigration and the small boats crisis is right up there at the top of people's lists of priorities. We know that you're sick of being lied to about Rwanda. You're sick of being lied to about how the French are doing so well with your hard-earned money. You're sick of being told that the government's plans are stopping the boats and stopping other forms of illegal entry. We knew that this Rwanda deal was coming to a head, so we made the call to dispatch our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, to Calais. Now, on tomorrow's show and on Thursday's show, he's going to be revealing some absolutely shocking things that completely blow the lid off all of those things that the government is promising. Here's a little flavour of it.
Join us tomorrow night and Thursday night as we report from northern France. And despite Rishi Sunak's continued optimism that his Stop the Boats policy is working, we've uncovered evidence that the migrant crisis here is as bad as it's ever been.
Yeah, indeed, you don't want to miss that. Shortly, Andrea Jenkins, MP, Dame Andrea Jenkins, is going to be joining us. She's going to be kind of revealing what's going on behind the curtain as the right wing of the Tory party scrutinise this policy in detail. But to respond to some of the things I've said there now, I've got political commentator Suzanne Evans, I've got GB News contributor Albia Mancona and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Suzanne, I'll start with you. Would things be any better under Labour?
Things could always be worse under Labour, but I must admit, when you've got so many people coming into the country and so seemingly an impossible task up again, I just don't know, Patrick, is the answer. The Tories have handled this shamefully, shambolically. 2010, they got into government, first of all, in coalition with the Lib Dems on a manifesto to cut immigration to the tens of thousands. Boris Johnson, the same in 2019. It tripled under since 2019. So even if they do get a handle on this Rwanda issue and flights do get off the ground, we're talking about, what, 50,000 a year coming across in small boats?
Well,
That's less than 10%
the theory would be,
of
obviously, that
immigration as a whole.
it would act as a deterrent, and therefore it would stop that number of people. But Albie, I'll come to you on this, because we have obviously had Yvette Cooper there, who was pressed quite rigorously. Look, are you going to cancel this plan? Are you going to cancel? She basically said they would. She said we'll replace it, and that they're going to use that money to fight the gangs. The problem is we've already spent the money, so they're going to spend more money fighting the gangs, and I think Labour are basically now admitting that they're just going to scrap Rwanda.
The question you asked, Suzanne, was, do you think things could be better under Labour? Maybe things could be better under Labour. Let's look at the statistics. It brings me no pleasure to say this, but in 2002, I think asylum seeker applications were at about 84,000. Labour got them down to around 17,000 by 2010. The Conservatives have been in power since 2010. They've gone back up to 81,000.
Is that not because a Labour government is perceived as not being racist and lefty lawyers are less inclined to drag it all out through the court?
Well, all I know is if we look at the numbers, Labour were better at dealing with asylum seekers than the Conservatives have been. So maybe Labour would be better at dealing with them.
Rebecca?
I think they will be better because I think they'll be better generally, but also they're not shackled to this thing that we all know isn't going to work. They don't have to keep pretending that everything was a good idea. They get a fresh start, and that is a massive bonus. Also, there are a lot of Labour voters, not my kind, who live in London and feel smug all the time, but the rest of them who deeply, deeply, deeply care about this. Labour is generally a party that is fairly...
But what's the policy there? What is the policy?
Well, I do think, broadly speaking, that trying to get the people trafficking, as in the large-scale organisations that are doing that under control, is really important. And a lot of that is about cybersecurity and cybercrime, because it's if you can invest in your infrastructure there, it's usable across the board, both tackling that problem and other problems that I think are coming down the line.
All right.
I think that's the problem, that the Conservatives really haven't been sorting the root cause of this. They're trying to come up with a deterrent, they're trying to come up with these crazy plans, but as Rebecca says, ultimately it's clamping down on the traffic.
Well, look, the Conservatives have made a few statements in recent weeks. Firstly, that Rwanda will act as a deterrent. Secondly, that they have been stopping the boats, and that people from Albania are not coming anything like the numbers that they were before, and that there are fewer people waiting on the other side of the channel. Mark White, our Home Security Editor, has been over there for us, and tomorrow's show and Thursday's show, we blow the lid off all of that. The problem, as we will expose, is worse than it's ever been. So, Rwanda or no Rwanda, that's what we're up against, and we should be under no illusions of that. Other news outlets seem not particularly inclined to show you that, but we certainly will. But coming up, we will have the UK's most entertaining paper review. You won't be bored as my panel of news experts, and this lot, chew through the latest headlines hot off the press. And will Nigel spend another night in the I'm a Celebrity jungle? I'll reveal the eviction results as we go down under, so you don't have to bother sitting through that tripe. And next, James cleverly hailed his new Rwanda treaty today, but several Tory backbenchers, they aren't convinced. They've gathered for a behind-closed-doors meeting earlier. Former Education Minister Dame Andrea Jenkyns joins me live in the studio to reveal, right here on GB News, exactly what went down. Don't miss it.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm
not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth.
It's your new
Yes, I
teeth.
know.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On a night where the European Research Group are making waves in Westminster, I am delighted to welcome the Deputy Chairwoman, Dame Andrea Jenkins. And breaking tonight, dozens of Tory MPs from the European Research Group, New Conservatives and Common Sense Group are uniting. They're setting up a star chamber that will scrutinise the government's new Rwanda treaty. After intense meetings both last night and earlier tonight, a Brexit-style panel of legal experts has been assembled to analyse the effectiveness or otherwise of James Cleverly's latest Rwanda legislation, with rumours that it could reach Parliament as early as tomorrow. Dame Andrea, thank you very, very much. Great to have you in the studio. Now, I believe you've got a little bit of the inside track for us. So you've been at these meetings?
Yes, I was at the one last night, which was with the New Conservatives, the 2019 intake of centre-right Conservatives. Tonight, they came to our ERG meeting, and tomorrow there's another one with the Common Sense Group, which is a John Hayes group in Parliament. So we're committed to working on this together because it's so important for our constituents and for our country.
So what's the mood like then? What's been said? What's been discussed?
Well, I think it's too early to say what we're going to do yet because we need to examine this. But all I can say is that we're committed to working together because we've seen how the left of the party, they work so well together, and so we're doing the same. And this is so important. And I mean, at the meeting this evening, we had Suella, we had Pretty, Jacob was there. We had some really, strong contenders there to really put in their views forward on what we need to do. Bill Cash was there. Bill Cash, as we've discussed, is restarting the Star Chamber. But the Star Chamber, Patrick, I mean, during the Brexit days, the heady days of Brexit, where we had to fight in Parliament against all the Remainers in Parliament to get Brexit, they really was a strong force because these are lawyers who, and some of them are parliamentarians, are also lawyers, who will be examining the detail and see how watertight it is and can it be challenged.
We have some interesting stuff here from the document, so I'm going to read it. I'm hoping I'll be able to bring up on the screen. This is agreement between the Conservative, between the government of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland and the government of the Republic of Rwanda, fine, wishing to continue the excellent bilateral relations between both countries, appreciating the deep economic ties, considering that for many years Rwanda has willingly been hosting and giving shelter. The word considering here is on it 4 times on this one page, acknowledging the need to provide international protection for refugees, etc. From your initial sighting of this document, how do you feel about it?
I'm deeply concerned, to be honest, Patrick. I mean, the tone of that first page, I think it's actually going to be a feast for lefty lawyers. But it's a small print that we've seen bits coming out tonight where it says that the Rwandan government will decide whether they, on a case-by-case basis, whether they want to take these people into their country. And also, we've got to take refugees from their country. So to me, if we're trying to get the numbers down, it just seems bonkers.
So hang on a minute. So from what you've seen, it's up to Rwanda to decide
on a case-by-case basis
who they take.
Absolutely.
And we will have to take refugees from Rwanda.
Absolutely. So how are we getting the numbers down if we're taking extra from them?
So even though we're not sending that many people to Rwanda, we're still also going to be receiving people from Rwanda.
It's bonkers, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. And could you vote for that?
Not as it stands, of course I couldn't, no, absolutely. I mean, the key thing is as well, I mean, the measures that was announced, you know, the last 24, 48 hours about raising the threshold as well with people coming over, what they've got to earn. I'm pleased with measures like this, but again, that doesn't begin till the spring, and how many more people would have come in before the spring. So I think we need to get our finger out. We need to get working on this immediately. And this better be watertight, because if it isn't, then the flight's not going to be going off to Rwanda.
So if you all come to the conclusion that it's not watertight and that...
Well, if the Star Chamber come to the conclusion as well.
And the Star Chamber is
a group of lawyers, yeah. Right. Some of them are parliamentarians.
And their verdict should be in on this within the coming days?
Yes, it will be, definitely.
It will be. If they decide that this isn't watertight, what happens?
Well, it's always down to the individual MP. Like, if we're talking during the times of Brexit, when they looked at Theresa May's deal, they looked at Boris's deal, we waited for their judgment on it, and then, you know, a lot of us in the IG, we voted against. I mean, well, and I mean, there was 20-odd Spartans who voted against Theresa May's deals. However, it's down to the individual MP. So it depends whether those individual MPs can be bought off by the whips as well.
OK, so if we had the ERG, the New Conservatives and the Common Sense group, what kind of numbers are you talking there? And I know it's down to every individual MP, but let's just assume, hypothetically, they all vote against this, right? What kind, roughly?
I'd say, I mean, looking at what the ERG membership used to be like. I mean, I'm not deputy chairman anymore.
Yes, sorry, I misread that.
But I mean, we'd have about 80 to 100 members then. I don't know what it is at the moment. I ain't got sight of the figures. I'd say it's probably, with the other groups, maybe about 140 MPs. That's a
substantial.
Guess.
So it's a substantial number, and one would imagine that Labour aren't going to vote for this. So it
could be defeated. Yeah.
OK.
But we need a solution, though, don't we? You know, we want it to succeed, because we want to be sending people across to other countries. And also, Patrick, did you see in the news the last 24 hours how France is ignoring the European Court of Human Rights and sending a radical Islamist to a country which they deemed unsafe?
Yes.
So if they can ignore it, why can't we?
Exactly. Exactly. No, exactly. And this is something that I think is going to keep rearing its head. Look, Andrew, thank you very, very much. Absolute pleasure, as always. Going to be a fascinating couple of days. Watch this space. I think it's Dame Andrea Jenkins there. Now, coming up, is Nigel Farage still in the running to become King of the Jungle? We will go down under to find out the result of the latest public vote. They've got strong points-based immigration in Australia, haven't they? I wonder if they'll deport him. Plus, my panel return for the most fiery and entertaining pay-per-view that you will not get anywhere else. I will also show you this year's winner of the Turner Prize. And all I can say is, I know Michelangelo back in 3.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now we cross live to GB News' reporter Adam Cherry, who's outside the Versace Hotel for us, where celebrities go after they've been booted out of the jungle. Now he's got the latest on Nigel Farage in the I'm a Celebrity camp. Adam. Oh, we're going to have to hold it there. We'll get Adam's audio sorted. I will fill you in if you're just watching us. Apparently, Fred has gone. Nigel is still in. So Nigel Farage has seen off Fred and Nella, which is, I think, a triumph, an absolute triumph for the main man, isn't he? So he will be remaining, for the first time in his life he's ever wanted to remain in anything, in the jungle for another day. I think it is actually quite fascinating. We do have a little clip for you, OK, of Nigel Farage in the jungle last night. Now, hey, we all know Nigel here at GB News, don't we? And yeah, he's got strong conviction in his political views. Who knew that he was also, quite clearly, a sex icon?
I'm too sexy for my love, too sexy for my love. Love's going to leave me.
We were also given the delight of Nigel Farage. I'm too sexy for my shirt.
Sexy for my shirt, too sexy for my shirt, so sexy it hurts. I do know the Fairbrass brothers that produced that hit. You know, I'm too sexy for my shirt. You've got to get your shirt off.
Right, Adam, so Nigel stays. We're going to have to sack this one off, unfortunately, but there we go. All right, look, we'll hopefully go back to Adam. Anyway, as we get the gist, Nigel does stay in the jungle. Let's bring you tomorrow's news tonight now in the most entertaining pay-per-view anywhere on telly. The very first front page has just been delivered for my press pack. Right, the Metro goes in with new Rwanda treaty signed. It's a done deal, but will it pass the UK Supreme Court's verdict? We go on to the I. Why did the bodies have to pile high? COVID families have 10 questions for Boris Johnson as he gives evidence at the COVID inquiry today. That will, of course, be tomorrow. That was the I, so we'll move on again now over to the Daily Mirror as well. If we can bring that up, that will be absolutely lovely. Christmas, cosmetic surgery fear. Turkish company selling cheap festive deals at events in Britain. Risky bum lists offered, but no danger warnings despite death grief. It's a Mirror investigation. And we're off to The Guardian. Apocalyptic conditions in Gaza blocking aid, warn UN officials. Sellafield nuclear leak could pose safety risk. So there we go. And Tory writing threat to Sunak on Rwanda. Yeah, we've been right across that from the start. But now, let's have a little look at the Daily Mirror, OK? Because this is kind of a return to the old I'm a celebrity issue with Nigel Farage. The Daily Mirror has launched a pretty transparent campaign against our very own Nigel Farage. If you're just joining us, it's remaining in the jungle thanks to all of your votes. Fred is, of course, off. As recently as Saturday, their front page carried Labour MP's venomous assessment of Farage, who was labelled poisonous due to his politics. But this morning, they changed their tune. Now, apparently, Nigel is too boring for the jungle, with ITV insiders reportedly branding him a waste of money. So, panel, as the Daily Mirror's hit jobs against Nigel Farage continue to evolve, is the left now desperate to cancel him at any cost, Suzanne?
Oh, they always have been. Come on, who on the left has ever liked Nigel Farage? It's been, let's get Farage from day one. And as you say, one day he's boring, one day he's too sexy. They can't make their mind up. They just want him out.
Yeah, I mean, Albie, firstly, your reaction to that clip. Is Nigel, in fact, too sexy for his shirt?
Oh, well, Nigel's not quite my type, although he does look very good in that video. But on the Mirror, trying to cancel Nigel Farage, I mean, a left-wing newspaper going after a right-wing figure like Nigel Farage, I, for one, am shocked.
The thing is, so apparently the Mirror, they did a poll, right, where of about 3,500 people, supposedly, and reportedly about 1,500 of them said that they were going to back Nigel. And then what happened after that was they got two kind of nobody Labour MPs to come out and say that this man is, and I'm paraphrasing here, essentially a force for evil in this world who tears at the fabric of British society and must be taken down. And then that didn't work. So then they go, oh, you know what, he's dull, he's boring. We know the two people he clashed in with there, Rebecca. It was Nella and it was Fred, and the public have offed them.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not a great fan of Nigel's. However, what I will say is that everybody I know who knows him says he's, in person, a very nice man. And it seems like the people in the camp are enjoying his company, which, while confusing to me, seems to be a consistent review of him. What I really can't get on board with is this conspiracy theory that ITV are trying to keep him off the show or get rid of him. They did not spend £1.5 million to put him on television to then try and get rid of him. They want him to be fun. It's just that it's a tired, boring, worn-out format that people aren't watching because it's
But is
dull.
it appropriate, in your opinion, Rebecca, for Labour MPs like Nadia Whittome to go after Nigel Farage in the Mirror about I'm a celebrity, get me out of here?
I mean, I don't think it should be the #1 thing on their list that
What's that
day,
all
but I
about?
don't think it's a problem either. I don't think it's wrong that they did it. I think if they were asked a question, they're allowed to answer it, but I don't think that it's a particularly pressing.
It's on the front page of the Mirror, Nadia Whittome, get him out of there. Does she not have better things to do?
I mean, I imagine that didn't take her very long. If it did, then I'm worried about her quality as an MP, but I imagine she replied quite quick email.
I have to say, I think, I'm not sure how much more of Nigel's body I can cope with seeing on the television, actually. We've seen his bare bottom. We've now seen his chest today. I mean... all I can say is I'm glad that when I was working with Nigel in UKIP, he never got...
But look, it's interesting.
I'm 100% sure, though, this is the beginning... I'm sorry...
Body positivity.
This is totally the beginning of a relaunch of his political... or, like, a change of political direction. This is about making him more likeable, more accessible.
Yeah.
This is kind of his, like, Boris Johnson, like, have I got news for you era.
So do you think it's working, Rebecca, as one of his critics?
Unfortunately, yes, I do.
Warming to him?
No, but I think the British public love somebody who can laugh at themselves.
Yeah, but also, you know, supposedly, if you believe what you read in a lot of the newspapers all the time, or you read online, or you see it on Twitter, you know, the public are massively in favour of, you know, all this Gen Z woke stuff, massively in favour of all of the Remain stuff. Well, I'm sorry, but Nella was in there, you know, screaming like a banshee.
Well, Gen Z don't watch
time.
this programme, in fairness. Gen Z and I'm a celebrity...
commenting about it on Twitter.
But the Gen Z don't use Twitter, broadly speaking. Gen Z don't have any part of any of this. This is a very, like, boomer, Gen X
fine.
thing.
And then you've got Fred there, who at every single opportunity was trying to have a pop about Nigel trying to make a point about European greed, which, by the way, absolutely does exist. Fred not letting him finish and then accusing him of talking rubbish, although he's more impolite than that. And Albie, the British public, who do watch I'm a Celeb, have decided they prefer Nigel Farage to all of that.
Yeah.
Look, I think the British... No, I'm not, because the British public like watching positivity. Nella was just miserable and negative all of the time, getting into arguments with people, just saying everything was offensive. No one wants to watch that on television.
And Nigel's also got really stuck into all his tasks and all his...
No, he hasn't. He's been like, with the greatest of respect, he's really rubbish. He can't hold his breath underwater, allegedly, because he smokes so much. I can't judge. We all like a fag.
That's very much a health
He's not
thing,
been a whimper about it.
Absolutely, but he hasn't, I think, broadly, the reviews I've read have said that he hasn't been, like, throwing himself into the task because he's not very able to. So I'm not sure that's why. I think people just like a naughty boy.
Ageist now, are we? Oh, dear.
well, there we go. You
Ageist.
See, just a little...
Ageist, ableist,
Just a little
all of it.
reminder for some people of a couple of the stories leading tomorrow's papers. Ministers threaten to quit over Rwanda flight law. 10 senior Tories are prepared to resign if the Prime Minister presses ahead with hardline plan. So Rishi Sunak faces up to 10 ministers quitting if he adopts a hardline approach on Rwanda and uses emergency legislation to circumvent the European Convention on Human Rights. So this is a pincer movement for Rishi Sunak. I'm going to be returning to that shortly with Tim Stanley of that particular parish, who's hopefully going to give us a little bit more inside info as well. But, look, here is some proof, if you ever needed it, that art is subjective, right? Take a little look at this year's winner of the prestigious Turner Prize, Jesse Darling, with his exhibition at the Gallery Towner Eastbourne. I'm just going to play some clips of it now. That's a crutch and an oxygen cylinder. He has said that he was inspired by, quotes, the effects of many years of austerity, Brexit, the pandemic and the hostile environment generated by the government's immigration policy. And playing to the woke gallery, the Berlin-based artist gave the most unoriginal speech in the history of the awards ceremony, slamming the Tories, slamming Margaret Thatcher before pulling out a Palestine flag because, well, isn't that what left-wing people are supposed to do? Here's a bit of it.
And finally, thank you very much.
Yeah, all right. I mean, is that art? Seriously, Suzanne? I mean, it's some scrap metal.
I love modern art, and I find it very difficult to make the case for modern art very often, and this does not help.
I don't know if we might be able just quickly to just bring a couple of those pictures back up again, but I mean, Rebecca,
it's so fatuous to try and show a picture of a sculpture, which is like an immersive experience. These are like large-scale installations.
It's not an immersive experience.
And put it on a.
It is. You get that at the tip.
I'm going to say, and I don't know, that I'm not sure how regularly
Rebecca,
do you consume modern art?
Right,
How often do you go to galleries?
I went to the Tate Gallery, and I'll tell
Which
you what
one,
I
modern
saw.
or Britain?
I'll tell you what I saw.
Modern or Britain?
The one in...
the one with the people faces or the ones with the bits of stuff?
The one that looks like a giant carbuncle, right?
OK.
So I went there, and one of the exhibitions was, quotes now, bit of rope, right, on the floor. Another one was a television screen just on an empty room. Another one was a woman who had feathers for fingers, who was doing this over her face. That's not art, that's a breakdown.
Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that it isn't art. It made you think something, it made you feel something, it created a discussion. It was an interesting day out.
It made me think I'd paid too much money to get in.
It's free.
And it made me feel like I wanted to leave.
What do you think about...
It's not for you.
...about modern artists like Tracy Emin, who just have a, don't tidy their room for a year?
Are you joking? That is one of the most incredible pieces of modern art ever created. That tells... That is a physical story.
After a few weeks.
Yeah, it's a diary. It's a piece of human life that you can stand inside and consume. That is absolutely art. It's some of the best art.
It is. I totally agree with Rebecca. Art is not something that's stuck in history. It's not just paintings on a wall.
It's about beauty.
It's just
a skill. And there can be a beauty in ugliness, but it's also about telling stories. Caravaggios are not beautiful.
Right, I'm drawing a line under this art discussion, because it's just... I just
Is it a bit confusing, Patrick?
I don't understand how anyone in the right mind's going to think that's award-winning, Anyway, now, since 1947, the people of Norway have gifted a Christmas tree to London as a thank you for Britain's help in saving them from the Nazis back in World War II. And this is what they've sent us this year, OK? So, I'm sorry, but I think it takes the mick. all right, it would arguably be less offensive to send us nothing at all than a tree that looks like it's been put through a car wash. Right, the back of the tree is missing. Like, it's gone. We don't know where it's gone. I don't know how that happened. They've had to do a branch transplant on the tree, which I think involved cutting off other branches in less obvious places and sticking to the back of it, like what Wayne Rooney did with his hair. Now, honestly, what have we done to upset the Norwegians this year, Albie? That's borderline offensive.
Patrick, you should have seen the tree last year. It was worse.
I think this one's worse. I really do.
But
I reckon...
I remember when I was younger, they never used to look like this.
No, they used to be beautiful.
We'd go every year to go and look at the tree when the lights are being switched on, and I'd always think about how beautiful and full it looked.
I
now,
reckon if
is it a Brexit thing?
I think if you had some time on your hands, you could probably do a picture of them over the last 20 years, and they would get balder and balder and balder.
Yeah, but what? I'm sorry, but like, do you think this is deliberate? Like, presumably,
absolutely.
But it must be. But why? What have we done to the Norwegians apart from save them from the Nazis?
Well, what I'd like to do is see what it looked like when it left Norway, and you just wanted to sabotage en route.
Yeah, it might be like a yodel issue or an every...
Can I just say, like, that presumably is someone's job in Norway, right? So can you sort out the Brits' Christmas tree? Yeah. When that tree turns up for the second or third year on the trot and it looks like it's got mange, do you not think that maybe that person loses their job?
Why aren't we getting our tree from Scotland?
Yeah.
Why are we letting other trees come over here and stand in our Trafalgar Square? Why don't we have a British tree that speaks English?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Why is it green? Why isn't it white?
That tree, that tree does not contribute anything to this country
at
all.
Nothing.
Right.
No taxes.
OK, coming up is Nigel's jungle nemesis Nella Rose, a Greatest Britain or a Union jackass. My panel offer their unfiltered opinion shortly. But next, columnist in the Daily Telegraph, Tim Stanley, joins me. Expert analysis on tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And there's breaking news of a fresh Tory revolt. He's got the inside scoop on that. Back in 2.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, third time lucky. Nigel Farage stayed in the jungle. Fred, out of the jungle. We are going to go to Australia now with GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, what's going on?
Right, hopefully I'm loud and clear, Patrick, because you're right. Breaking news here in Australia. Fred Sirieix is out. Nigel Farage survives another day in the jungle. Another round of evictions gone. The Vote Remain campaign surges on. Behind me is the Marriott Hotel, where Fred Sirieix is shortly going to arrive with his friends and family to stay for the duration of the remainder of the show. So that's the breaking news for you. Hopefully you heard that loud and clear. Nigel is in, Fred is out. Fred's heading to that hotel behind me very, very shortly. Hopefully I'll bump into him.
Absolutely. Adam, thank you very much. Just very quickly, what was the look on Fred's face like? You know, because he's quite smug, isn't he? So presumably that evaporated.
Absolutely, Patrick. Well, he was an early favourite, or at least one of the more popular contestants. But it turns out moaning about Brexit and moaning about the cooking doesn't do you any favours with the public. So that smug look was wiped off his face quite quickly.
And now, of course, he's got about a week or 10 days or whatever it is trapped in that hotel with Nella. So have a bit of that. Right, thank you very much. That's Adam Cherry, GB News reporter in Australia. Glad we managed to get to him in the end. There we go. So your news, of course, is that Nigel Farage is indeed still in the jungle. Now, more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages are in. They are hot off the press. And I am, well, joining me to delve into this big news story is his columnist for the Daily Telegraph. It's Tim Stanley. Tim, thank you very, very much. Look, I'm just going to whiz through the Times before we get to your parish, as it were. So the Times have got Sunak's middle way on Rwanda. Migration law will seek to allay Tory fears over human rights. PM has ruled out withdrawing from the European Convention. There's also one at the top there. KFC thwarts efforts to stop fast food outlets near schools. And anti-obesity policies to stop takeaways being open near schools are being thwarted by KFC. I'll go to the Telegraph, of course, as well, because on the front page of your paper, it is reporting tonight that up to 10 cabinet ministers, is that right, are threatening to quit over Rwanda flights law if Sunak adopts a hardline approach. Tim, I'll throw it over to you. What's going on?
First of all, I'm sorry I can't be with you, but I had to watch I'm a Celebrity. Joy to see the Frenchman getting voted out. And it wasn't because he was French. What's happening? If you back up slightly, and just consider what's happened with the Rwandan deal. The plan was to send asylum seekers who the government regarded as coming illegally to Rwanda instead of being allowed to settle in Britain. The UK Supreme Court said you can't do that, and you can't do that because we cannot guarantee how the Rwandans will treat those asylum seekers. So the government has responded with two things. One, the treaty that was signed today with James Cleverly in Rwanda, by which Rwanda would make certain commitments which are supposed to satisfy the court. And the second thing was a legislative push by the government, which we expected to come forward tomorrow, but which we now think is going to be delayed until later in the week because of resistance among more liberal-minded ministers from the government, potentially up to 10 of them. Now, what the government, or what more conservative ministers think they can do, is not withdraw from the ECHR or tear up the Human Rights Act, but essentially ignore it. You have notwithstanding clauses, you have a block on judicial review. So you say, acknowledging all of the complaints and all of the worries about sending people to Rwanda, ultimately Parliament is sovereign, it has the final say, and we say they can go. But there is a significant body of opinion within the Tory party which really doesn't like that, which regards membership of the ECHR, Human Rights Act, as legal obligations that the government has to abide by. So it doesn't surprise me, actually, that there is a significant number of ministers who have threatened to resign over this. Because if you think about a number of other policies the Tory party has come close to endorsing, then backed away from, it's because even with the Boris Johnson 2019 majority, there still isn't quite a majority within Parliament, including Tory MPs for Tory policies. Remember, Liz Truss said that one of the reasons why her tax cuts were not balanced with spending cuts was because she said there wasn't a majority for it in Parliament.
Yeah, no, indeed. But it is amazing how far we've fallen, though, is it not? From the days of Suella Braverman at least tub-thumping and kind of saying that she wanted this. She dreamt of getting the flights off the ground. James Cleverly reportedly called the Rwanda scheme batshit, is now our Home Secretary. And we are now, or it seems, completely categorically ruling out that we're going to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, the ECHR. And we've gone back with some kind of middle way. I mean, does he think, is this how he's going to win an election, this really? Because is it not just going to get held up in the Lords and held up in the courts again? And, here we are, 2 years later, still banging on about it.
Well, first of all, for me, a strong parallel is with the Windsor Framework and the Northern Ireland Protocol, that the Tories think they can come up with a middle way wheeze that'll get them over the hump of an issue. And the right of the party just keeps saying, no, that's not how it works. To logically follow through what we've been elected on, you have to do X. So you have to totally withdraw from the Northern Ireland Protocol, or you have to withdraw from the ECHR. You can't find a way around these things. The government's calculating that two things will play in its favour. One is that the number of boats is going to continue coming across the channel is going to continue to fall, that they will get someone on a plane to Rwanda, and that they can pick a fight with Labour in the coming election where they can say that we're actually tough on immigration, we're getting things done. But I'm an immigration hawk, but a Rwanda skeptic, because I have thought from day one, this is not legal. I don't see how you can actually do it. Therefore, don't propose something to the public. Promise the public something you can't legally deliver. And what Suella Braverman, that she argued from the beginning, and she warned the government, unless you do legislative things, you cannot get it done. And thus far, she's being proven correct.
Look, Tim, thank you very, very much. That's Tim Stanley there at The Telegraph. I implore you to go and read all of this guy's work. OK, so we are going to go to my panel, I think. Oh, no, we've got a clip. We've got a clip very quickly of Suella Braverman, apparently, being heckled.
Had me as the girl from The Exorcist, which was described in one review as disturbing in a very entertaining way. I'm not sure if that's a compliment. I don't think it is. It's not. Would you like to come up? You've got so much to say. Come on. Come on then. So nice to meet you. Yes,
okay. Afterwards, we'll do the boxing match afterwards. Okay. Let's let Suella finish.
Love you. Love your work.
Wow, OK, there we go. No doubt that'll be talked about a lot tomorrow. We're going to have to be quick about this. Let's reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Now, I'll start with you, Suzanne, Greatest Britain.
So my Greatest Britain is a guy called Richard Donnell. He's the executive director of Zoopla, and he this week had the guts to speak a self-evident truth, but one the open borders people don't like, and that is that uncontrolled immigration is fuelling Britain's rental crisis.
OK, Albie?
My Greatest Britain is the wonderful James Cleverly. I've actually had the pleasure of meeting James Cleverly back when he was Foreign Secretary, and that's because he's had his 5-point migration plan. He's been able to do in a few weeks what Suella Braverman wasn't able to do in over a year.
Oh, OK, all right, Rebecca.
Mine's the King's Foundation, royal charity, who have been converting Buckingham Palace curtains into kimonos and auctioning them for charity. Very Sound of Music.
OK, the winner is Suzanne's nomination. Yes, that's right, Richard Donnell. Good stuff. Very quickly now. Union Jackass.
So Jackass is Prince Harry. You quit your job, Harry. You're pushed off to America. How dare you still expect British taxpayers to pay your bills?
Nella Rose, just the most unlikable person, or I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. You know, for a young black woman to get such a huge profile on a national television show, she was unlikable, disagreeable, found everything offensive. I'm glad she's gone.
Go on, Rebecca.
Comedian Matt Rife, who went on a very famous podcast to complain about being cancelled despite having a Netflix special on Netflix right now.
Really?
Not super cancelled.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, the winner is Albie's nomination of Nella Rose. Thank you to my wonderful panel. Great stuff tonight. Thank you to everybody who's been watching and tuning in. Headliners next. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 with our exclusive from Calais.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll be a colder night tonight than last night because much of the country will be under clear spells. That's because the rain many of us have seen through today, brought by this low pressure, is pushing off to the east, and behind it we've got a bit more of a settled interlude, at least that will last at least through Wednesday. So plenty of clear spells out there this evening and a frost developing quite quickly, so temperatures will drop off quite quickly tonight. There's an ice warning in force across eastern areas of Scotland. We'll see some mist and fog developing across parts of Wales and the southwest of England, and it will be widely a frosty start to the day tomorrow as well. Temperatures will start to rise though in the west with more of a southwesterly breeze. In the east, however, still feeling quite chilly with only highs of around 3 or 4 degrees. And then Thursday is going to be a widely more wet day. There are warnings in force for heavy rain across many western areas as well as parts of Scotland too. There could be some difficult driving conditions because of the rain. And the rain will last through the rest of the week, Friday and into the weekend, but temperatures will start to rise into double figures. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good
Good evening, I'm Polly Middlehurst and it's 11 o'clock. Some breaking news to start this bulletin. A 42-year-old woman has died and 2 others have been injured after a shooting in East London. This news coming to us in the last half an hour. 3 people, we understand, were found with gunshot wounds after police were called to the incident in Hackney this evening. The woman died at the scene. 2 other people, a 20-year-old man and a 16-year-old boy, were taken to hospital. No arrests so far. Well, the other main news today is that a 28-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder following the stabbing of a 29-year-old woman in Aberfan in South Wales. A pregnant woman was subjected to a knife attack there this morning. The victim was taken to hospital and is believed to be stable, her wounds not thought to be life-threatening. Chief Inspector Rob Miles from South Wales Police gave this update earlier.
The man is known to the victim and is currently in police custody. I appreciate there will be a real sense of shock within the local community with the attack having happened in broad daylight. Local schools activated the lockdown protocols to keep people safe. Neighbourhood officers have been in the area